Welcome to this episode of Leading Women in Tech. Today, we're diving into the topic that's all too common, but often misunderstood: burnout. Whether you're a woman in tech leadership, an entrepreneur, or simply someone juggling the demands of work and life, burnout can creep in without you even realizing it. So in today's episode, I want you to take a moment to check in with yourself. Ask, what is the story I'm telling myself while managing stress? I'm going to explore the myths and realities of burnout, the key indicators to watch for, and how to ensure you're not just pushing through, but truly addressing the root causes. You're going to learn today how to identify emotional, physical, and behavioral and workplace signs of burnout, what they might mean for your health, your career, and relationships. And we're going to debunk some myths along the way, like you can't burn out if you love your job, and uncover the truth behind these subtle but harmful misconceptions. So grab a cup of tea or coffee, take a deep breath, and let's get real about burnout and how to overcome it. Welcome. In case you're new around here, I'm Toni. I am your leadership executive coach, here to help you level up as a leader. And today's episode is very dear to my heart because I've experienced really bad burnout. I think everybody I love has experienced serious burnout. My clients, so many of them have come to me with burnout, have had burnout before they've met me. I think it's fair to say most of us experience burnout at some point in our careers. I'm not entirely sure I can think of somebody who hasn't. And how bad it gets really depends on how early you recognize the symptoms. So today is about leveling up your self-awareness around burnout. It's recognizing the myths that you might be telling yourself about burnout and actually seeing the key indicators in your own lives. I'm going to give you some actionable strategies to address your burnout before it becomes a really big deal that means you take a year off. It is not healthy to get to the point in your career where you need to take a year off to recover. Taking a year off to have fun, I fully applaud. Taking a year off because you burnt out and your health is suffering is not acceptable, should not be normalized, and yet I hear so many women doing this. So I want you to learn how to set boundaries, improve work-life balance. Yes, that thing that seems like it's impossible. I want you to get support before it's too late, and I want to empower you to prioritize avoiding burnout, seeing the signals for change, and that this is not a personal failure. So without further ado, let's dive in to what is burnout, what are the indicators I want you to be looking for, and what can you be doing about it? Well, first of all, let's start with the definition. Burnout is not just feeling tired or stressed. Those are your early warning symptoms. It's a state of emotional, physical, and mental exhaustion. It's caused by prolonged and excessive stress. A little bit of stress is not a bad thing. A little bit of cortisol is actually necessary. I feel like cortisol and stress have got a bad name that they shouldn't have. A little bit is very good for you. Cortisol is the thing that wakes you up in the morning. If you don't have cortisol, you would just be in a coma, right? A little bit of cortisol is necessary to function. A little bit of stress actually elevates your IQ temporarily. It allows you to do amazing things. It is a good thing. The problem is when you have prolonged stress, not just over days, but over weeks, and in some cases years, it's terrible. It's so bad for us. And we know this, the online space is all about stress is bad. We've got to avoid it. And then you get stressed about being stressed if you're me, right? I get worried about being worried. I get anxious about being anxious. And I get stressed about being stressed. You're like, oh my God, my stress is going to kill me. It's going to give me a heart attack by the time I'm 55. When this happens, we're actually not dealing with the issue. Burnout can manifest in many different ways. Feeling constantly fatigued, emotionally drained, irritable. Do you keep losing it with family and friends? Overwhelmed, losing motivation or passion for your work you once loved. Even experiencing physical symptoms like headaches, muscle tension, trouble sleeping. By the way, having a regular yoga session or a regular massage is good to keep things under control, but it is putting a plaster on the problem. Some muscle tension is just being human. Some trouble sleeping is just being human, especially if you've got young kids or anything like that. But having to do stuff to make it so that you can function, there's nothing wrong with a massage at all. I'm a big believer in them. But if you are having massages regularly, because otherwise you are so tense, it's causing you physical issues, that's a sign something else is going on here. Because all these symptoms are your body and mind's way of saying something needs to change. So let's go into some myths and indicators. So first of all, emotional indicators. I've got 3 major indicators of burnout symptoms. The first one is being irritable and overwhelmed. Now, we will often tell ourselves, I'm just stressed. It's normal to feel this way when you're busy, irritable, overwhelmed. The reality is stress is temporary and often tied to specific events, while burnout is prolonged and leaves you feeling emotionally drained and disconnected. I want you to ask yourself, what do you think you should feel? Are you getting irritated at everybody around you? What do you need to be looking out for that means that there's a sign here that this is not the version of you want? Because one of the problems with being irritable and overwhelmed is it becomes self-perpetuating. The more irritable you are, the more you are going to say things or be annoyed at other people, and you become more and more irritated, more and more overwhelmed. The people around you start treating you differently. Your partners, your children, your parents, your siblings, your friends start avoiding you or getting snappy with you because you're snappy with them, and it becomes self-perpetuating. So the burnout happens beyond potentially what's causing the burnout if it's work. Sometimes burnout is caused by family situations, and the same thing will happen there. You might be getting a family situation is causing burnout, but your irritability and overwhelm comes out at work, and it makes the situation worse. So I want you to ask yourself, are you more irritable than you used to be? Do you find yourself pissed off more than you used to be? 6 months ago, a year ago, 2 years ago? If you're returning to work or job hunting, especially if you've had a career break because of burnout, what were the symptoms you had that indicates that you haven't dealt with your burnout? What meant that you were irritable before? If you're getting that way again, what is an indicator that means you haven't actually dealt with it yet? Good question to be asking yourself. The second emotional indicator is a loss of motivation or passion. One of the myths I hear from people all the time is you can't be burnt out if you love your job. No, it's not true. Don't get me wrong. I think loving your job is a great inoculation against burnout. But the thing is, you can still have stress even if you love what you do. Burnout isn't about whether you enjoy your work. It's about prolonged overexertion, lack of boundaries, emotional exhaustion, even in roles you're passionate about. In fact, I almost feel like it's a two-edged sword. If you love your job, you love what you do, it is an inoculation against burnout. It relieves some of the stress because you're enjoying it. A huge cause of burnout is not loving what you do, because that causes stress. That misalignment is a huge source of stress. I think that one's pretty well understood now. But the problem is, if you are loving what you do, it's very easy to work too many hours, have loose boundaries, allow yourself to get emotionally exhausted because you love it so much. You care deeply. This is so common with entrepreneurs. You get so into it that you forget, hey, I need to step away from this from time to time. And that's where you can find this creeping burnout. So just because you love what you do doesn't mean you haven't got burnout. So if you've got a loss of motivation to get up in the morning, to do that thing that nobody's asking you for, but you know is really important, and you still feel like you love what you do, you're just struggling, that's a sign of burnout you should not ignore, even if you love what you do. I want you to ask yourself, what is going on here? What is it that might be causing this loss of motivation? What might be causing me to have a lack of boundaries, a lack of emotional bandwidth? Look at where you are giving too much because you love what you do. The third emotional indicator is being cynical, or rather increasing your cynicism. One of the things I hear people say is, I'm just being realistic. This isn't burnout. You should be skeptical about stress, right? I think a little bit of stress is not a bad thing, as I've said. But persistent negativity, detachment from your work are signs of burnout. So stop being so cynical about burnout. I find that people who are cynical about burnout are far more likely to be on the way to burnout or burnt out. They just say, I'm just being realistic. This is just who I am. Or I'm being realistic. This is the nature of being a senior leader. Like, stop being unrealistic, Toni. I have to do all these things if I want to be a senior leader. Stop being so cynical. Stop saying I'm being realistic. Again, this comes down to the boundaries, overexertion over the long term, emotional exhaustion. So I want you to check in with yourself. Are you telling yourself stories that you're stressed, but it's normal, it's realistic? It isn't, and it shouldn't be. Look out for that one. Okay, 3 physical indicators for you. First of all, I just need to sleep more and I'll be fine. Constant fatigue. If you are finding that you're just tired, sleep helps, but you wake up tired and you just tell yourself, if I sleep more, I'll be fine. That is a myth you need to ditch right now. Sleep can help, but burnout fatigue is a deeper, persistent, emotional and mental strain. It is not physical exhaustion, it is not a lack of good quality sleep. It does tend to correlate with lack of good sleep because burnout quite often means we're stressed, which means we are not sleeping well. But it doesn't mean that that is the thing that you need to fix. Again, if you have a good night's sleep, it's a sticking plaster. It might give you a little bit, but it's not going to fix the situation. So if you're telling yourself, I just need to sleep more, and you're telling yourself that day after day after day, that is a physical indication that you've actually got something going on deeper that you need to deal with. The second physical indicator is headaches and muscle strain. I touched on this at the beginning in my intro, but if you are telling yourself having frequent headaches is normal, having muscle tension is just part of sitting at a desk all day, it is not. Don't get me wrong, as we get older, our muscles are less helpful. Sit down, stand desks are amazing. But physical symptoms like headaches, tight shoulders can be your body's way of saying chronic stress and burnout. They can also be a way of saying you need to improve your posture. And that's what my physiotherapist would say to me. But it's way more than that. So especially headaches in particular, I remember going to the doctor when I was doing my PhD. Imagine how we came up to it, but having a conversation about the fact that I basically had a headache 24/7. And the doctor said, like, that's not normal. And I said, well, it is if you're doing a PhD. Like, I didn't have anybody in the PhD cohort I was in who didn't have chronic headaches. And guess what? Our stress levels were through the roof. Doing a PhD is 4-5 years of just increasing stress in my experience. And all the supervision I did of PhD students after I got my PhD, I would say the same thing was true of them. Maybe that's the European system, but I've certainly heard it from US friends and colleagues and clients over the years as well, that doing a PhD is just a lot of headaches. Turns out that's not healthy, not normal. It is a huge sign of chronic stress leading to burnout. So watch out for frequent headaches, muscle tension. Stop telling yourself it's just part of being at a desk all day. It's not. It could be bad posture, but particularly headaches is not bad posture. Headaches is more than that. There's something else going on. Your body might be trying to tell you to do something about your burnout. And then the third physical symptom is sleep. So I've already hinted at sleep. We all know when we're stressed, our sleep tends to suffer. Those of us who are night owls, or those of us who are neurodiverse, or as someone on my team says, neurospicy. I love that phrase. Those of us who are a little bit different in that sense will often find that we don't sleep well anyway. But when it becomes a chronic issue, or when you tell yourself, I'm just a night owl, it's how I work best, but your irregular sleep patterns are really causing problems. If you have trouble falling asleep or waking up feeling unrested, again, it can be a symptom of burnout, not just a preference for late nights, not just a preference for waking up. And I know somebody who says once you're over the age of 50, you'll always wake up in the night. And I'm like, all the health data says opposite to that. I think it's a sign of a physical issue, and a physical issue can be stress related. It can be physical issues causing stress in the body too. It can be that you've got issues that need addressing medically, But if you've got changes in your sleep patterns coupled with any of the other symptoms I'm talking about in today's episode, might be burnout related too. So don't just say to yourself, it's something I don't need to worry about. It's not related to stress. Might just be. And I say this as somebody who, of all the symptoms I'm talking about today, sleep or irregular sleep is one of my biggest issues. I have found, so to TMI, but hopefully helpful to those listeners who are also still in a phase of their life where they have regular cycles, I know that my sleep patterns shift massively over my cycle. Mid-cycle, I struggle so much to get to sleep. So much. I know a lot of people say they struggle to get to sleep during the first few days of their cycle. No, me, it's like in the middle. So do have a look at if there's a cycle going on, because that could be something else that's not strictly speaking stress related. I would argue that's your body's physical stress response to a hormonal fluctuation. And I certainly know when my hormones are in better check, I have fewer problems. I think my cycle aggravates something that's going on underneath. So once we've got through those three physical indicators, I want to move on to behaviors. These are the ones that are harder to diagnose, but are often the earliest warning indicators. This is what I'll often go through with clients. I'll be asking them questions. I'm like, oh, there's something going on here. But they're really struggling to see it themselves. So 3 indicators. First of all, procrastination or avoidance. Procrastination is often a sign of stress and burnout. If we find ourselves avoiding simple tasks because they feel overwhelming, we are procrastinating, we have avoidance, we might tell ourselves the myth of, I'm just lazy and disorganized. And I certainly used to tell myself that. But I know that my procrastination and avoidance goes up the more stressed I am, which is fascinating. It's an early warning indicator. Now, I'm a natural procrastinator. That's one of the ways my imposter syndrome manifests. So one of the things I do is a little bit of self-coaching when I recognize I'm procrastinating to diagnose what's going on. Why am I procrastinating around that thing? Is it one thing? Is it the whole thing? But it's lots and lots of things. That tends to be burnout related. If it's one thing, it's just one thing that's uncomfortable and I coach myself through it. If it's bigger, I get on the phone to my coach, well, actually on Zoom to my coach. Yes, I have a coach. And we dig straight into it. I recognize I'm avoiding something that's bigger than just one item. When I first started, I would always bring up anything I was avoiding. I was like, get me through this. Now I can self-coach myself through most of the things I'm avoiding. But if I'm avoiding a lot of things, I've got burnout coming. So I get straight into coaching with my coach and we come up with an action plan. So look out for procrastination and avoidance. It is such a great early warning indicator. The second behavior issue is withdrawing from others. Now, if you are an introvert like myself, you'll say to yourself things like, I just need some alone time. I need to recharge. Alone time is important, even for extroverts, believe it or not. But what we find is a constant withdrawal from colleagues or loved ones is also a sign of emotional exhaustion and burnout. So one of the things I do with clients early on is figure out what's their natural rhythm for socialization, parties, hanging out with friends. And then I'm looking for changes over the time I'm working with them. That means I can see a withdrawal. Sometimes I have clients who withdraw from coaching. It's why I insist that there's a contract between us. You can't just go, I'm quitting. We have 6 months. Once you're after 6 months, then I know you well enough and you know me well enough that I can just call you out and be like, hey, so what's going on here? But those first 6 months, if you are in the midst of burnout, initially you might be like, oh my God, this is the best thing ever. And then it gets a little bit like we're doing hard work and it's hard and therefore you need to withdraw. And so you just don't book your coaching sessions in. Or you don't come to me in Slack, and I really notice it. So if you find you're withdrawing yourself from friends, loved ones, colleagues, telling yourself you just need some alone time, if it's more than normal, it might just be that early indicator of burnout. Okay, the third behavior issue is going to surprise you, but overworking and overcommitting can be a sign of burnout. They're a sign of burnout, not a solution, because what tends to happen is we're overwhelmed, we're stressed, and we push harder. We tell ourselves the myth, if I can just push through, things will get better. But what this does is worsen the problem. So if you find yourself overworking or overcommitting, and crucially, a change might be a sign of burnout. Now, obviously, having boundaries is a great way to avoid burnout in the first place. So you should be finding healthy boundaries, not overcommitting, not being that yes person who overcommits and gets into the issue of undelivering. But at the same time, you are learning how to pull back. And hopefully you are then going to watch out for overcommitting. And I definitely, when I'm more stressed, I overcommit to my clients. I don't know why this happens, but I do. I find myself overcommitting. So let's just do a brief recap. So far, we've got emotional indicators, the overwhelmed, irritable, loss of motivation, cynical. You have physical indicators such as fatigue, headaches, changes in your sleep patterns. And we've just gone through some behavioral indicators, which include procrastination, withdrawing yourself from those around you, and overworking and overcommitting. So we have a few other areas to cover. The next one is your cognition. I've got 3 for you here again. Difficulty concentrating, decision fatigue, and imposter syndrome and self-doubt. So difficulty concentrating. If you find yourself saying, I'm just distracted because I have too much to do, or I'm just distracted because I didn't get a good night's sleep, but this is a regular occurrence, again, it can be burnout, because burnout impacts your ability to focus and process. And it means that tasks are less manageable and it becomes self-perpetuating. This is the really annoying thing about burnout and stress, is because your cognition goes down, because physically you're not doing as well, you're not sleeping as well, you're not filling yourself up with your friends and loved ones. Your IQ literally drops, which means your stress is going to go up because you're not doing your job as well as you should do, or you can do, right? You're operating at a lower level. So if you are struggling to focus, it could be a symptom of burnout. Similarly, if you are struggling to make decisions, if you're struggling to make decisions under pressure, if you're procrastinating on decision-making more than you used to, decision-making in a timely manner is one of the most important leadership traits that there is out there. Good quality, high quality decision-making in a very timely manner, ideally fast, but slow enough that you're making the right decisions. This is a very hard thing to do. And a lot of my coaching, again, goes into this. High quality decision-making is speed plus quality, right? But when burnout comes in, even small decisions feel overwhelming. And I certainly experienced my fair share of this in the last year, having moved house now, not once, but twice, into temporary accommodation. And finally, we're living where we're going to live for the next few years while we build a house. And this can mean that our mental energy is depleted. So if you're making decisions under pressure and either not making them or making them badly, might be a sign of burnout. And then the third one that's a cognition issue is self-doubt and imposter syndrome. And again, these go up when you don't sleep well as well. And I think for me, they go up at different points in my cycle. You got to love hormones. But if you were telling yourself, I'm just not good enough for this, or I need to do this 10 times better than I've already done it, and I can't share this until I've done that, it is potentially your imposter syndromes and self-doubt going up more than they would, because burnout amplifies self-doubt, making you question your abilities even when you're excelling. So when I've talked before in the podcast about how I have dealt with my imposter syndrome, but I haven't got rid of it. Some people can just move past it completely. But I have definitely found it's still there. I'm one of those people, I think it's going to be with me for the rest of my life. It changes how it's manifesting, but it's always there. But when it goes sky high, I'm like, oh, stress is coming up here. It's a very good early warning indicator for me again. Okay. The final area of things to look at is what's going on at work and life. So first up, reduce productivity. Now, this is directly related to your drop in IQ. If you are saying to yourself, I'm just going through a rough patch, this will pass, don't listen to that. Check in on, is this a productivity drop and an efficiency drop because you aren't dealing well with stress? Is it stress caused by external pressures? You're telling yourself they're getting ease, but actually the reality is you're in this new normal. Can be an issue with burnout. If you're avoiding feedback, if you just don't like feedback, you tell yourself, I don't need feedback, I know what I'm doing. Avoiding feedback is a defense mechanism when you're emotionally drained and unable to process constructive criticism. If you are getting feedback and you're reacting really negatively to it, even quietly internally, rather than going, what do they have there that I can learn from? Might be a sign of burnout. If you're feeling underappreciated, which often goes hand in hand with that avoiding feedback, right? I don't need recognition to do my job is maybe something you're telling yourself. But if you don't have intrinsic motivation and you're consistently feeling unappreciated, it leads to burnout and disengagement. So if you're feeling underappreciated, check in there, like what's going on. And then a couple of lifestyle things. Again, this is situational. So we've just talked about productivity, feedback, and feeling underappreciated, which tend to be more work related, but they can be personal as well. But then what is going on in terms of your personal life? Are you neglecting self-care? You might be telling yourself, I don't have time for it right now. I certainly have noticed in the last 12 months, when I've been super busy, simple self-care routines have just gone out the window. Not doing squats every day. I do squats every day. I'm trying anyway. Not doing my full face routine morning and evening. It feels so good when I do it, but I feel like, oh, it's too much time and I can't be bothered. If you neglect self-care, it's a symptom and a contributor to burnout. If you don't take care of yourself, you're putting everything else ahead of you and your well-being. And even simple things like as you know, working out just a little bit, doing a little self-care routine, having a long shower. It might not seem like that's going to reduce your stress, but it's your brain saying, I'm putting me first for 10 minutes. That does an awful lot of good. It isn't actually just the act of having a massage, taking yourself for a manicure, or, you know, having a long shower or doing your face care routine. It isn't that per se. Some of those things, like especially physical exercise and something like actually going and having a massage, can be really good, don't get me wrong. But it's the act of saying, I'm the center of my world for 10 minutes. That massively reduces stress because you're not thinking about everybody else, you're thinking about yourself. And we do need that. And as women, we're so terrible at dealing with that. The other one that's really important to look out for is when you are looking at your coping mechanisms. If you're leaning on another cup of coffee, if you're struggling with your memory, you're using your to-do list more. Now, I have a terrible memory, but I've noticed over the years that I rely more on my calendar than I used to. If you're struggling just a little bit more turning to caffeine, alcohol, other substances, tools that you've learned over the years that can help you, if you're relying more on them, even if it's like literally your calendar, right? I'm a huge believer in calendars, huge believer in to-do lists. But if your reliance on them is changing, then it could be a sign that your body and mind are struggling to keep up with the stress. So have a look in on that. And then the final, probably the most important one, which again comes to a self-perpetuating cycle, is losing your work-life balance. If you tell yourself, I'll rest once I've hit my goals, we need to talk. One of the most important lessons I learned from my business coach when I first started working with her was she said to me, I don't work with people who want to work a 60-hour week. I just don't. And I was like, well, I'm starting my business. I need to work crazy to make this work. I've given myself 3 months to make money. And she said, it doesn't matter how much you work. That's not the thing that's going to make you money. It's how you work. And I was so obsessed with working with this woman. Corey, I adore you if you ever listen to my podcast. I was so obsessed with working with her. I went, okay, I can do this. Best thing I've ever done though is having really strong boundaries when I'm feeling the pressure. And at the beginning, I had a deadline. I gave myself 3 months to make this business work or I was going to go back to corporate. And actually what really mattered was how I showed up, not how much I showed up. If you tell yourself, I'll rest once, I'll rest when, I'll work less when, that is not the thing that is going to make this work. Burnout happens when we work consistently rather than prioritizing our personal time and having no space to recharge. It isn't about long hours, it's lack of recharging and reflecting. Long hours is not the problem per se, it's what we aren't doing because of those long hours is the problem. And so if you're telling yourself, I'll rest when I'm done, I'll rest when I hit this many figures, I'll rest when I've made this much money, I'll rest when I retire. I'm sorry, my love, but if you carry on this way, you might not hit retirement. So, hard truths, hard words. But I'm hoping this has been a bit of a wake-up call for some early indicators. I do not want you getting to the point where you're so burnt out you need a year off. And I've met a fair number of women, amazing, talented women who have done that. I want you to figure this out earlier. I want you to go through those early indicators, go and re-listen to this episode if you need to, whether it's constant fatigue, irritability, cynicism, procrastination. Do not ignore them. Remember, I've just told you a whole load of myths you might be telling yourself, like, I just need more sleep. Well, pushing through will fix it. They will keep you stuck. Instead, I want you to take a moment to pause, reflect, prioritize your well-being today. Start right this minute. If you're listening to this, don't say, I'll start this tomorrow. I want you to start right now. Reach out to a trusted coach, mentor, friend, somebody you trust. Put in place a plan of action to set boundaries. If you're listening to this in the car right now, I want you to finish listening in a minute. And I want you to call somebody and I want you to say, I need you to hold me accountable on a plan for my boundaries, my mindset, and steps towards recovery. I have just heard that I am probably on my way to burnout, or I'm already there. And I want you to do something about this right now. So I want you to make that call right here, right now, today. If you are listening to this and thinking, yeah, that's me, I'm on my way there, let's action it. And do not do it tomorrow, do it right now. If you've had the time to listen to this today, you've got the time to make a phone call. You've got the time to put something in your calendar. You've got the time to say, I'm going to reach out to Toni. You've got the time to reach out to a close friend for support. You've got the time to tell your partner, I'm struggling. Because burnout isn't just about feeling tired or stressed. It's an emotional, mental, and physical state that's going to have long-term consequences if it's left unchecked. I've talked to you about those signs today, from emotional indicators to the physical symptoms like chronic fatigue. But I want you to remember one important thing. Burnout is not a reflection of your abilities or your worth. It is a signal that something needs to change. You are still extraordinary. You are still going to continue being extraordinary. It doesn't mean you need to give up working in tech. That's part of why this podcast exists, is I'm sick and tired of women getting burnt out, not getting promoted, not getting what they deserve, and leaving the tech industry and contributing to a tech industry that is still so bro-cultured. It is hard for those of us who are staying in it. And that means there is more burnout amongst us than there is with our peers. But if we are to change this, we need to inoculate ourselves against burnout before it gets bad, before we leave. We need to prioritize our well-being. We need to find a balance. And I know that is such a difficult word. I want you to know we can do this. I want you to know there are lots of women who do this, who do navigate burnout before it becomes an issue. And I want you to know that we can do more. So if you want to dive deeper, book a call with me, hop over to LinkedIn, send me a DM, just have a chat, tell me what's going on. Tell someone. Someone needs to understand how you might be burning out and how they can support you. And even better, share this episode with somebody who might need to hear it, whether they need to hear it to support you or they need to hear it before it's too late for themselves. Do somebody a favor, do yourself a favor, and share this episode. Remember, you deserve success without sacrificing your health or happiness. And so until next time, stay inspired, stay empowered, and let's keep leading as women in tech.